One of the things that bothers me as an African and also as a human being, and this is something that many people do not pay attention to, is that when someone from the outside comes to solve your domestic issues, they end up dominating and having power over the decisions that you make in your home and probably even destroy it completely. Yet, you could have solved these issues within, and many times in a long run, you start to regret that you wish you did not allow the help of an outsider to solve the problems in your home. I am talking about the death of Muammar Gaddafi and the Libyans. Now, recently, about a day or two, yesterday, I think so, Saif, the son of Gaddafi, the second son of Gaddafi, is called Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, was murdered by four men who came, switched off the cameras, and killed him. But you see, if we are to look at who Saif is and what he was to the Libyan people, he was not only the son of Gaddafi, but he was also the head of a special unit in the military of Gaddafi. It means he actually helped the father stay on power. He's just not even just maybe a soldier. He's an educated economist. In fact, he attained his PhD in economics in London. So you would say he's very well versed with how the economy of Libya should run, number one. Number two is that he had the military might around him. He knew how to protect the father, and in fact, many times he was looked at as a guy who had a friendly face on the Western, side. That's how the Western used to look at him. He went to them, talked to them more times than actually the father did, because the father was a little bit brutal in public many times, or maybe even behind. He expressed his views about the Western people, quite frankly and openly. Saif was a little bit different from him on that. But where am I going with this? I think that African countries should never allow foreign countries to help them solve the problems on the African continent. Before Gaddafi died, Libya was one of the strongest economies on the African continent, no doubt. They had the best welfare if you look at it. You can go and read about it the way you want, because there is no document I've come across that says that their welfare was as bad and tainted the way the Western tainted it, because their reasons for coming to remove him were dictatorship and all these other things. Their oil put out was so high. In fact, Gaddafi or Libya helped other African countries set up a couple of things. When you talk about the mosques, he built mosques across almost Africa, especially when it comes to southern part of Africa, where he was trying to drive the influence of Libya and also trying to encourage African countries to jump on board and create an African bank, an African currency, and something like, United States of Africa, something that Africans would have been proud of today. Now, we may talk about his bad things, but if you look at the good things, then where the economy of Libya was growing at 5 to 10%, every single year, and now they're in negatives, the insecurity they're experiencing today, the low production of oil compared to what they had then. A Libyan sits down and wonder, did they need the intervention of NATO to help them drive out a leader that they felt maybe had ruled them for so long that they have no idea what another president looks like, and maybe they would become better? And here's the thing, when Gaddafi died, he actually died with about 3 of his children in the same year, or 4, about of them, if you can correct me there, in the same year. Saif tried to escape, but he was actually captured by the Zintan, militias at that time. He was taken to court, tried to open up so many cases against him. The international courts, came through and everything. And, good luck, he was released in 2017. And he tried to get back in politics between 2021 and 2020. And now, remember, Libya was even supposed to have an election where he expressed his desire to rule the country again. Well, that didn't come to happen. And here he is now, dead, killed in cold blood. And in my view, is that probably whoever wanted him dead now did not want him to participate in any kind of elections that would be happening in Libya, because the Libyans at this point are disgruntled with what they have today. The freedom, they may not well have had the freedom of speech and all these other things, because I mean a dictatorship is a dictatorship, but the things that the Libyans used to enjoy from welfare, education and all these other things that are not even experienced in so many African countries. In fact, I don't know any African country that is providing for its people like that. Maybe Morocco, Algeria, but others, it is a struggle. So where we feel like this should be a basic right to the people of normal people in society, and these are the things that the Libyans used to enjoy, are not there anymore. So my feeling, and this is not news, I'm just expressing myself in what I think is going on in Libya in terms of connecting this to the death of Saif. The feeling is that if Saif comes to the ballot paper, the people who are alive today, who witnessed the revolution or lived before Gaddafi was killed, and they saw the enjoyment, the housing they had, the things they were enjoying from their oil, and the direction that Libya was taking economically, may sit down and say, you know what, maybe we can go back to that time if we have the son of Gaddafi come, because he was like his second in hand in everything he did. And he responded to the Western, he appeased to the Western basically, but also kept the interests of the Libyans at heart. I'm talking about a man who said, you know what, we are de-escalating our interests of developing nuclear, because Libya really wanted to acquire nuclear weapons. And the Western world was so much against this. The French, the USA, the British, and all these other people did not see that as something that would be very good, because already Gaddafi, it was alleged that he was behind the bringing down of a plane and killing so many Europeans there. So it felt giving this guy weapons is not going to be something very good. With even the way he conducted himself when he visited countries where he slept in tents, he never really wanted to stay in state lodges. But well, he's the president, and he knew that the kind of leader he is, he needed to put his security first than any other thing else. And his son knew how to de-escalate some of these tensions between him and the Western world. So if Saif had succeeded in going to the ballot paper in Libya, unless it's reached, I strongly believe that the people of Libya would have gone back to sit in a moment and said, wait a minute, we actually had a good, health system, an economic system that developed Libya from the rags to the riches at that time when we had Gaddafi and his son in power. How about we bring him back so that we go back to a time whereby we don't struggle to seek for medical attention, that the medical healthcare system is available, that the Libyans don't have to cross into Europe. In fact, it's after the death of Gaddafi that we saw so many Libyans and other African nationals dying on the boats trying to cross into Europe. Otherwise, Libyans never, they saw no reason whatsoever to cross into Europe, because they literally got almost everything they needed as citizens of Libya. I'm not saying all of them could have enjoyed. Of course, there's a section that may not be satisfied with the rule of him, maybe didn't enjoy the tangible benefits, but I'm sure they believe inside them, they know what the government had done for them. They have an oil company, Libya, something like that, which actually is in many African countries. They even had telecoms, they had national housing, they had invested in telecoms and national housing projects, so many of them in Africa. As an African, I would say he may have been a dictator, but had the African spirit at heart and had the desire to develop the African continent. That's what I think about the death of Saif. And these are the things that come back to my mind when I think about the death of Saif. And that's why I beg, I'm not even begging you, but I beg to ask a question, whether the intervention of foreign countries is necessary to solve the problems that the African countries face within or domestically. And this is what maybe Venezuela should look at and understand that, look, a precedent was already set that Venezuela, despite them suffering economically and politically, it may actually get worse. Because it's clear that USA came for oil. Gaddafi was killed by Obama's regime because it's Obama that went first, then NATO followed. Of course, USA and